right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If this is your first time tuning in with us, welcome to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. We're all about bringing science, exploration, adventure, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. You can find all the events we have coming up in this quickly ending school year at exploringbytheseat.com. We have an amazing World Ocean Week of almost 2 to 3 dozen live events coming up that you can join in with your classrooms and meet ocean scientists and explorers from all around the world. So as we've been doing, I guess for the last 3 years now, we have another amazing event with the team from Hearts in the Ice. The team consisting of Hilda Strom and Sunniva Sorby, 2 seasoned polar ambassadors and citizen scientists. Hearts in the Ice was created in 2018 as a global platform for education and social engagement, connecting students, scientists, manufacturers, environmental organizations, and all who care about the health of our planet in a big conversation around climate change and ways we can all be part of the solution. So Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Classrooms has followed along since September 2019, all the way through May 2021, and all the way through today. We remember that Sunniva and Hilda spent a total of 19 months living in a remote trapper's cabin called Bumsaboo in Svalbard, isolated and 140 kilometers from their closest neighbor. So since their return from the Arctic last May, they've been continuing with monthly school calls and have been keynote speakers at COP26 and other key events. Climate change isn't taking a break, and neither are they. So we're not finding Hilda and Sunniva in the same location today. I'm going to bring Sunniva in. There we go. Hey, Sunniva, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. And then through the magic of satellite phone technology, we have Hilda in the high Arctic. Hey, Hilda, how are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm doing great, thank you.
All right, amazing. We have just a killer event today. So Sunniva, I'll let you tee it up a little for us, and we'll keep things rolling right along.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Joe. And I'm so happy that there are so many classrooms joining us today, especially since the school year is kind of winding down. For 19 months, we didn't shop at all. There were no stores where we were. We didn't shower. And so when since coming back, I do shop, and I try to get good books. And I found this book in the Toronto airport, and I picked it up and I finished it now. And it's I'm so thrilled that we have Sheila Watt-Cloutier joining us today. And I encourage everybody to buy her book, The Right to Be Cold, because it's just an amazing read on the human face of climate change. So what I thought we would do, Joe, is maybe just tee up the time. There's a 4-minute little video clip to give everybody an idea of where we were. It's hard to imagine 19 months way up in the Arctic, and then you'll get to see a little bit of close to where Hilda's calling in from via satellite. So if you tee up that video, we'll just set a little bit of the mood for the Arctic this morning. To live here in the Arctic, to overwinter and experience time standing still, is to lose your thinking mind to regain your senses. It is to live as one with the cold, dark, simple existence.
Welcome to Bumsaboo. This is an old trapper's hut built back in 1930 for beluga hunting, and this has been our home now.
We are both experienced seasoned polar explorers and guides, and we both have decades of experience living in and working in cold climates.
We're out here on a lunch break,
And it shouldn't be the way.
Both of us already knew a few key researchers studying the polar regions, so we just reached out to see if we could be of help. This is Base Camp Bumsaboo, and this is our citizen science lab. We're collecting data for 8 international research projects up here. The goal is to engage the public and use the data collected to increase overall knowledge on a given subject.
This is an ice core drill, and we bring this out with our Link snowmobile out on the ice, and we drill 2 of these holes in the ice. The centimeters that's closest to the ocean, that's most important for the scientist, because in there small organisms and larvae are having their first stadium of life.
Most of what we are collecting you can barely see, like microscopic algae under the sea ice, yet it is connected to a web of life that is part of such a delicate balance, like spokes in a wheel. And now they, the scientists, are understanding that there are a few spokes out of alignment and things are out of balance.
Right now there's absolutely no ice at the end of November, and last year there was almost a full fjord of ice, and here comes the drone in for its little landing.
We have been able to walk along the open ocean, along the beaches, and pick up debris. This is a dead bird, and we often find these nets with the reindeer antlers because they itch in their antlers and they get stuck into it, and they pull this around until they can't pull anymore, or maybe it's frozen or it's stuck somewhere, and they starve to death.
Life here is challenging. The darkness, the isolation, coming back from a scooter ride to find a massive polar bear on your doorstep, a meter away from your dog. The ice conditions, being in a boat and the engine not functioning. What do? Waking up after a storm and discovering that the front door has several meters of snowdrift in front of it, and you absolutely cannot get out. We celebrate the small joys here every single day, and we make sure to acknowledge each other's efforts. Kind words and a smile go a long way in this world of isolation.
I just felt like an old horse.
There is absolutely no sign of a global pandemic where we are. It's surreal to think that the world is spinning off its axis just thousands of kilometers away, and we feel so extremely privileged to be exactly where we are. We care deeply about our planet, our natural spaces, our people, our animals, so we're working to protect what we love.
Our goal has always been to take people out of climate despair and into climate optimism, which is about hope and action.
Life is good here at Bumsaboo. Life is as good as we make it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Climate change does not take a break, so neither are we.
Thanks for that, Joe. I just, if you would key up the wings photo, it's really interesting because today, women in science and exploration, like Sheila and I, even though we're citizen scientists, are expanding our knowledge of the world with new discoveries and insights all the time. And the unfortunate part is that women are typically, they encounter gender bias at every turn, and our work is underfunded. Actually, less than 2% of all of the U.S. charitable giving goes to women in science and exploration. So a huge shout out to Wings before we bring in Sheila for supporting our Education Month. And so go to their website and be part of their mission if you feel so inclined. So we really want to thank them for their support this month. Thanks, Joe.
All right, no worries at all. I have Hilda backstage as well, who is in the high Arctic. Hilda, just before I introduce our speaker, I just want to give you a chance to say hi, and just, you and I were talking a little bit while the video was playing. Can you just set the picture where you are, what you're doing today?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I am in the high Arctic of Norway, Svalbard, where Sunla and I at the trapper's cabin, but far up north. As north you come, actually, towards the North Pole. And I'm on board one of Hurtigrutens ship called Nordstjernen, the Northern Star. And right now I'm calling in from the Erosion phone, and it's an amazing day. We are in front of a glacier, and we have just been to land. It's almost winter still. It's a lot of snow on land, and we're talking climate change to our guests and trying to inspire them to and engage in the climate dialogue. So it's really fun to be up here with guests and see this magnificent glaciers and nature that we still have up here in the north that are melting in a far too high tempo. It's a magical day, and a day that I think all of our guests are inspired to really try to take care of this fantastic nature up north.
All right. You know, it feels almost like the good old days during our first year when all we had was satellite phone. I'd have to hold the phone up with the two of you connected at Bumsaboo. Yeah, bringing back some memories.
The good old days.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sunniva Hilda, I'm going to tuck you backstage temporarily, and I'm going to introduce our amazing speaker for today. As Sunniva already mentioned, we have Sheila Watt-Cloutier joining us today. Sheila was born in Kuujjuaq, Nunavik, northern Quebec, and was raised traditionally in her early years before attending school in southern Canada and Churchill, Manitoba. She's the past chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, the organization that represents internationally the 155,000 Inuit of Canada, Greenland, Alaska, and in the Far East Federation of Russia. In 2005, she filed a climate change-related petition with the commissions as an urgent message from the Inuit sentinels to the rest of the world on global warming's already dangerous impacts. On March 1st, 2007, she testified before the commission during their extraordinary first hearing on the links between climate change and human rights. She is the author of The Right to Be Cold, One Woman's Story of Protecting Her Culture, the Arctic, and the Whole Planet. And this has been shortlisted for the British Columbia Canadian Nonfiction Award, the Cohen Shagasi Prize for Political Writing, and the Kobo Emerging Writer Prize, and the CBC Canada Reads Competition. So Sheila's coming in live with me right now. Hey, Sheila, how are you?
Good to be here.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you joining us today. We've got classrooms joining us from right across the U.S. and Canada, and we're excited to let you take over for a little bit and bring us into your world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, indeed. My humble beginnings are from, traveling only by dog team the first 10 years of my life and speaking only Inuktitut, which is my language, my maternal tongue. And my name is Sheila in my birth record, but in the Arctic, in my language, in Inuktitut, there is no SH sound. So everybody just calls me Sheila. So Sheila and Sheila are the same, but without the SH. So I will try to walk you through my world today. And it's really an honor to be speaking to a younger generation because most of my life's work now is speaking to audiences all around the world, but mostly it's, conferences and events of many adults around the world, no matter who you are. And so I'm really honored that this is a younger generation. I'm a mother and a grandmother. I have almost a 25-year-old grandson who lives in Nunavik, in the high Arctic, in Iqaluit, the capital of Nunavut. And I have a 9-year-old grandson. His name is Inuapik. And I have a little granddaughter who's almost 2. So that's who I am. And just to introduce you to what I'm wearing today, because this is very cultural and traditional, these what you see here on my dress are called ulus. And they are a woman's multi-purpose knife that can cut meat, that can help to skin the seals and clean the skins. And you use it for multi purposes. And it's very, very honored as an ulu, as a knife for women. And then, of course, the berries that we pick. And this is all beaded by the wonderful, talented Julie Grenier, who happens to be my cousin's daughter. And so there's a lot of creative activity going on in the Arctic. As much as there are challenges, there's some incredible art that's happening up there. But let me walk you through my world a little bit. as I say, the transition that happened very quickly from going from dog team to mobilized machines happened all in one lifetime. We went from living out on the land to living in communities, forced into communities by governments and so on, so that we could start institutional schooling. But before that time, of course, the land was our natural teacher. It taught us everything that we could possibly want and need and required to not just survive one of the harshest environments that we live in the Arctic, but we thrived in it, and our wildlife thrives in it. So that humble beginning that taught me so much about connection to the ice and connection to the cold and the snow that would provide us with remarkable, really good organic food, such as fish and caribou and geese and ptarmigan and seals and whales and walrus, all of those that keep us very highly healthy, because it's very healthy food. Certainly was really the foundation upon which I do my work in protecting a way of life that taught us so much about ourselves, but it also taught us remarkable character building, and not just to become proficient providers and to become good natural conservationists to protect what we love around us, but the character building is really important. So the work that I have been doing for the past many years now, 27 years to be exact, is really about humanizing these issues of climate change, and not just talk about them from a scientific perspective or an economic perspective or a political one, but to really put the human face to these issues, because the world has come to know our Arctic and its people, or the Arctic more for its wildlife than its people. And so to try to get the world to understand that, Inuit have a real deep connection to our environment, to our way of life, and it should be protected, has been my motto for a long, long time. And I've often said since 27 years, if you protect the Arctic, you save the planet. And we know today that climate change really is hindering a way of life that really depends on that cold, depends on that ice, depends on that snow. Because for us, it's about mobility and transportation. And as soon as that starts to become precarious, it becomes an issue of safety and security. But I'll get into that in a few minutes. But I just wanted to walk you through in terms of what is it about the Arctic that has shifted so quickly that would make for all these challenges that we face in our communities? And I know that as students, you are learning a lot more about the history of our own country here. And the same holds true, of course, for the United States of America, for the students who are studying now the history of what's happened to Indigenous peoples throughout the world in terms of what colonization has done and the traumatic events that have happened to render us almost powerless over our lives. And so it's better to understand that context of where that comes from, because some people tend to think that Indigenous peoples have not been able to adjust and adapt well, which is why they're struggling on a social and health level. But that's not the case. In fact, we are probably one of the most adaptable people in the world. We've had to be in order to survive every moment, living moment in pursuit of the good food that we need to eat by hunting and fishing and gathering and being very connected to our environment and understanding the connections of the changes that happen on a daily basis. And so when colonization came about and they started to build schools, institutional schooling took over. And then our natural teacher, the land, started to weaken in terms of that connection. And so we were forced into communities. We were not able to speak our own language anymore. They took away some of the incredible spiritual practices, such as drum dancing, throat singing, and all of these remarkable shamanism, the wonderful spiritual ways in which we lived and that we thrived in. And so that kind of connection started to really sever our sense and lose our sense of self-worth and our ability to act and think for ourselves. And we started to become more and more dependent upon institutions, and even substances such as alcohol and drugs. And the high suicide rates that exist in our communities today are a result of all of those consequences of the historical traumas of being forced into communities and taking away our language and on our culture and our practices that were just so powerful for us. And so that historical context is now being exposed in Canada, in particularly with the recovery of the children at residential school. I was 10 years old when I was sent away for school, 2 years in Nova Scotia, 3 years in residential school in Churchill, Manitoba, and another 3 years in Ottawa. And I never was able to come home until 5 years later during the winter time. And so those kinds of severed from our family and severed from our community and our culture and our language really did a lot of harm to us during those periods of time. But now we're starting to find out that, you know, the answers and the solutions to all of these issues that we are dealing with are not far, the solutions are not far away. In fact, they are right here at home in our culture. The power lies back in our culture. And we're realizing that even though we have been groomed to dependencies of all kinds and lost our sense of self and integrity and our ability to act and think for ourselves through that colonization process, we're now finding that if we can stand back on our feet, on our culture, on solid ice, pun intended, then we can start to reteach our children once again to be strong and to be worthy and to have that integrity, because the hunting culture, again, is not just about teaching our children how to be proficient providers and natural conservationists, even though those are really important to be able to provide for your family and learn to be a great hunter and provider and respect that is all around you, to be a conservationist naturally. But it also teaches you when you're out there waiting for the snow to fall, the ice to form, the winds to die, the animals to surface, you are being taught patience. You're being taught every single moment of your life out there in that harsh environment to be courageous, to navigate with a lot of focus, and to be able to be bold under pressure, to withstand stressful situations, and to be able to develop your sound judgment and not to be impulsive, because impulsivity puts you and others at risk. So you learn all of that, you integrate that on that ice and snow. And so what's happening is that you're developing your sound judgment and your wisdom. We call that silatunik in my language. And that's the hallmark of Inuit teaching, is to teach our children to become wise, to make the right choices for themselves. But all that was ripped away and stripped away when institutional schooling that didn't make any of those connections or even didn't make much sense to how we needed to develop those skills for the opportunities and challenges of life on the land, on the ice, were taken away. And so we became very dependent on things that were not helpful to us. And so we're finding now, of course, that our culture is still there. And as long as that ice remains and we remain connected to it, we will prevail and we will continue to live a strong life and be people who can contribute to the world who is looking for answers to sustainability. So as much as we are finding that culture is the medicine that we seek, we're finding that the Indigenous culture, Inuit culture, is the medicine the world seeks in being able to understand sustainability at its best. Because the values and principles of Inuit culture, of Indigenous culture, is about sharing. It's about protecting the environment, the weather, our environment and climate. And it's about protecting the wildlife, our rivers, our lakes. All of that is ingrained in us. And if we have that instilled in us, and if our younger generation continues to have that instilled in them, they will be better apt to adapt to the modern world, because those character skills that I spoke to about life skills are building the resiliency and the coping skills so that the younger generation who who learn that on the ice and snow in a natural setting are able to transfer that to the modern world. And we're finding those who have had that integrated within themselves are now able to adapt better to the stressors of the modern world. And so that's what we call our own suicide prevention, our own way in which to redevelop and really strengthen back the youth that are so much carrying that burden of the historical traumas that happened in our world. So really, it's about protecting our ice, of course, but it's also about protecting the future of our younger generation so that they may embrace their lives and not take it, and really be able to be proud of who they are as Inuit, and that we as Inuit can really be those sentinels, the guardians, the protectors of our planet as a whole, because the Arctic glaciers and the Arctic ice are melting very fast. And the Arctic glaciers and ice are the air conditioner for the planet. It is the cooling system for the planet, and it is breaking down. And so we all have to understand that connection, that as the ice melts, it is creating havoc everywhere else in the world. The hurricanes, the wildfires, the droughts, the floods, these intense tornadoes that happened just a few days ago in Ottawa, creating havoc for so many people. And of course, the wildfires out west in the last couple of years. And so I was busier than ever, until COVID hit, because people were starting to finally make that connection of the importance of the Arctic, the importance of the Arctic ice and its glaciers to the rest of the planet, because they were starting to live their own states of emergencies, as we have for a long time, trying to signal to the world that what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. It's only a matter of time that we will all be impacted. So where do we go from here? Well, I think this is an opportune time for all of us to humanize the issue of climate change in a way that it has never been. We have been focusing so much on the wildlife and only the ice, and not the human beings who live in the Arctic, who have incredible stories to share, who have incredible values and principles to share. And what I mean by that is values that really don't waste what we hunt and harvest. We take everything out of what we hunt and harvest and use it for clothing, use it for food, use it for tools. There's so many things that we do with what we hunt for. The nutritional value of it that most people don't come to understand. Why do we protect so much our country food? Why don't we just adapt and buy food from the stores? Because there's more than nutritional value to our country food. There is spiritual value to it that builds that confidence and that trust of the world around us. There is incredible ways in which we have values to that, the emotional value, which connects us to our identity, to our ancestry, to the hunter, and the rituals that happen when our first hunt is done by our boys and girls. There's a great celebration that happens, which builds their confidence to be able to provide for their families and their community for a long time to come. We also have the remarkable communal value where we're eating together in celebration of our culture. And there's of course, the cultural value that I spoke about in terms of the educational value of our country food and what we learn out on the land. And so the medicinal value as well. I have a remarkable young 9-year-old grandson who's on the autistic spectrum. And so for him, food is medicine. And so protein is medicine. It really calms him down, especially country food. And so all of those values put together are more than just about the nutritional value and what we ingest in our bodies. And so here we are in a world trying to make a difference. So where do we go from here? I think we have to realign and re-engineer the way in which we do business. I think that the way in which we innovate. And very quickly, because I have very few minutes left, is that I was with Tim Flannery, who is a great climatologist from Australia, and we were on a panel together, and he was asked, what is it about us that we're not taking climate change seriously and that we're not taking urgent action to address the issues of climate change. What is lacking in us? His response? Imagination. Imagination is lacking, he said. And this is a great climatologist, because imagination leads to concrete action. We can create new ideas. We can innovate. We can imagine a new way forward. We can imagine new partnerships, new, more sustainable developing ways that are more sustainable. And so we have to reimagine. But I would suggest we reimagine and realign many of these values and principles to the Indigenous peoples on the ground, to Inuit, who are still relying on the well-being of their atmosphere and climate for their food, for their culture, and for the preparation of our children to be able to survive and thrive. So this is about our children. The ice, snow, cold is about our children. And so I think I would like to end with saying that it's about personal transformation. We have to think about how we approach this issue and change our attitudes about Indigenous people, about our climate change issues. They're all interrelated. They're all connected. And I would want to end with a quote and say that what Marianne Williamson often says, it's about personal transformation. So you at a young age can really start that process with and I'm just so thrilled that you are there listening to this today, and your teachers who are so open to teaching you a different way forward and reimagining that new way forward with intention. And so personal transformation, and this is what Marianne Williamson says, and it stays with me every day, personal transformation can and does have global effects. As we go, so goes the world, for the world is us. The revolution that will save the world is ultimately a personal one. So at your young age, you have that potential to become the change agents in how we address the issue of climate change, how we address the issue of the relationship with Inuit and Indigenous peoples. We are more than victims of globalizations. We want to be able to connect and teach the world about sustainability and how we can create a balance as a common humanity. So use us as teachers and bring us into your world, into your classroom, and use my book and many other books that are out there that are written by Indigenous peoples, because I think that's the way forward, and that we can connect with each other in that way. And I know things will happen slowly, but they will happen at the speed of empathy, and they will happen at the speed of trust. If we empathize and understand these issues from a deep human perspective, and that this climate change issue really indeed is a human rights issue. And when I pioneered that work in connecting climate change to human rights, it is really about our right to be Inuit as we know it, so we can continue to contribute. And our young people, your age group, can really thrive and start to lead in a good way and embrace their lives. So thank you for listening to me today, and I look forward to some of your questions.
All right. Well, Sheila, thank you so much. I think that was absolutely phenomenal, and I really, you really kind of hit a good point there with when we think of the Arctic, we immediately think about the animals, and we don't think about the people living there. And how things are changing for them as well, and their way of life and their culture and what that means. So thank you so much for bringing that front and center for our classrooms today.
My pleasure.
I'm going to bring Sunava back in here as well. I believe we still have Hilda on satellite phone.
Yes, you do.
We do.
Thank you so much, Sheila. That was so powerful.
Thank you. It was an honor.
You know, I have to say your book was a real eye-opener for me, because I didn't know so much about the history of the Inuit and the challenges. And your book is full of personal story and history around how we have evolved out of taking care of our people. And it's you bring some very important points to the forefront. So thank you so much, Sheila.
Yes, my pleasure. I'm so pleased that, and to think that, the book was out for a long time now before you were able to discover it. So we've got to do more outreach work, I think, in terms of trying to get it read. and understood in that way. But I'm just so thrilled that you were able to find it and resonate with it.
Very deeply.
All right. Well, there's questions already coming in via the chat. We're going to get to some of those. Don't forget to say hi and let us know where you're tuning in from. I'm going to bring in one of our first camera classrooms here. Mrs. Gowdy's grade 6-7s are hanging out with us. They're in Ontario and Canada. Hey, 6-7s, how you doing?
Can you hear us?
We hear ya. Yeah, good to hear ya.
Yes.
All right. Who's got a question for us? We're ready.
Come on up, Bradley. No, if you have a question, come up. Kaden, go ahead.
What was it like that first day you moved into that old track?
Oh.
Said what was it like the first day that you moved up to the Arctic into your hut?
Oh, so Hilda, I think that's for you.
It was chaotic. It was a very small trapper's cabin, 20 square meters, and we had a lot of equipment, a lot of food, and it was just a couple of years of lead up to being there. So it was actually chaotic, but it was also very grounding because all of a sudden we knew that we were there and we could just be right there. So it was a pretty powerful moment. Thanks for asking.
All right, Hilda, do you want to add anything to that? Your first day at Bumsaboo, although I think you spent a lot of time there before.
Yes. I've been living on Svalbard for 27 years. I didn't quite hear the question, but was it the first day at the Bumsaboo?
Yeah,
Since I said it was, a lot of stuff. We needed to take care of all the safety equipment, all the food, and all that. So it was also a very powerful moment for us, knowing that we were there all by ourselves, and it was a great adventure.
Yeah,
a little bit scary too.
Sure, and with no idea that COVID was going to extend that great adventure.
None.
All right.
Can you repeat that, Joe?
Oh, I just said, and with no idea that COVID was going to extend that great adventure.
No.
Yeah. So, Mrs. Gowdy's class will be back shortly. So, if you have another question, have that on deck for us. I'm going to bring in another crew here. We've got some grade. Oops, my mouse is stuck. There it goes. We've got some grade 5-6s hanging out with us today. Yeah, there they are. Miss Blaney's crew in Linwood. How are we doing today?
We're doing well, thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, we've got you via mic. If you've got a question for us, we're ready for it.
Awesome. I have a student here who had a question for you.
Yeah.
What kind of fish did you catch up there?
I think you have to get a little bit closer to the microphone.
What kind of fish did you catch up north?
Okay, I think that question's for me.
Yeah,
yes, we catch a lot of different fish. Well, not a lot, but there's several species of fish up in the Arctic. Certainly, from my region, we have Arctic char, which to me is the best fish in the entire world. But I'm biased when it comes to that because we eat it fresh, we eat it raw like sashimi, we eat it frozen. We eat it fried, we eat it baked in all various ways, but it is truly a wonderful fish. And then we have trout as well. We travel across our river in Nunavik, in Kuujjuaq, and across the river. And then when the ice forms, which is forming later, by the way, and often not as solid as it used to be. And then we travel into our little trout fishing, and we have brook trouts that we fish for as well. And we go to the lakes as well, and we have gray trouts and lake trouts that we fish for. And we also have the sculpins, which we fish for in the summer as well. There's all kinds of fish up there, which are really, really good fish. But Arctic char is the main one that we love, and trout.
All right. Hilda and Cinema, I don't believe you were doing much, if any, fishing at Bumsaboo. I could be wrong.
No, we didn't at Bumsaboo. It was often pretty heavy swell to put out a net for fishing. But we did fish before we went to Bumsaboo, and then packaged that up and ate it while we were there.
Yeah.
And we also had Arctic char, and we also had hot from close to the hut, but not during our stay.
All right. Let's jump to YouTube. Let's grab a couple questions from there. So, okay, here we go. Some grade 5s are tuning in London, and they'd really like to know, Sheila, a little bit more about how you dress for the cold weather. And then, obviously you get to visit, and over large periods of time, are you seeing changes in that part of Canada with the climate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of changes that are happening up there. But first, we dress for the weather, no doubt about it. And it's all clothing that is made from the animals that we hunt. Of course, we use some modern materials as well to make those. For example, in Nunavik, in the cold winters, we will wear down-filled parkas and down-filled pants, down from the goose that we hunt in the spring and in the fall. And we also have seal skin that we use that keeps us very warm, and caribou fur, caribou hide is very warm in the dead of winter as well. Our boots too, we have kamiks that are all handmade, and every one of these, the material, the clothing that we use are handmade and very warm. And we have fur around our parkas as well, fox fur mainly, which keeps us very warm out there. And our mitts, everything is handmade, and it is all very warm clothing. And the changes that are happening in the Arctic are very stark. I mean, we have beach slumping now. The coastal erosion is very evident all over the 4 countries in which we live, but more so in Alaska because it's open water up there. And the coastal erosion is creating a lack of protection on the coast now. So it's eroding the coast. And you just have to look at some of those pictures of Alaska and know that the homes are already falling into the sea of Inuit. We are marine mammal hunters, so we are very coastal people. And you'll see all of our communities, for example, in Nunavik, are all along the coast. And in Nunavut, there's only one community that is inland, and that's Baker Lake. We call it our caribou community. But we are marine mammal hunters, so we see the evidence of what's happening along the coast. The permafrost is melting very quickly, and so there's even homes that have been buckling and having to be relocated into different, more solid ground. And we have new species of animals that have come up that we sometimes don't even have a name for, whether they're animals, fish, or insects, or birds even. And so these changes, the ice is forming much later in the fall, it breaking up much earlier in the spring, and oftentimes it doesn't freeze over in certain areas like it used to before. So that's why I say for us, because it's travel and transportation for us as we travel on those icy highways. And as soon as it starts to become precarious, it becomes an issue of safety and security. And there have been many accidents and drownings as a result of even the seasoned hunters not being able to actually assess the situation and read the conditions, because the ice is forming differently from under, because the waters are warming so much. So these are some of the main changes that have happened, the storm surges that come up. The rain that happens in the middle of winter now more often than not. And so there's lots of major changes that are happening in the Arctic as a result of climatic changes and the warming.
All right. And then, Hilda, I know we have you on satellite with us, and I know in Svalbard, you noticed a lot of changes, including, natural disasters like the landslides.
Yes, that was back in 2015, and we had this huge snowfall that created a huge avalanche, taking 12 of my neighbor houses, just crushed them, and 17 people were buried inside their homes. It was a Saturday morning, and we managed to save 15 of them, and a 2-year-old girl and a 42-year-old man died. And it's I've seen this now for the last 15 years at least up here in the Arctic, and it's so it does make a huge impact on our guests when we travel with tourism. which, by the way, is an explorer cruise operator in the front seat of sustainable tourism and operation, to go ashore here and also to pass glaciers that, when I was here first time in 1995, they were 5 kilometers further out. So the melting of the glaciers and the warming of the temperatures, both in the ocean and the air, is really dramatic. And Svalbard is a place where this really happens faster than anywhere in the world. And it's like Sheila says, no one is immune against what's happening in the Arctic, because this is just a warning for what's going to happen in the rest of the world. So it is extremely important that we work as hard as we can every day to protect these cryosphere and the white areas and the snow on the ice.
All right. I'm going to bring in Mrs. Gowdy's group again, our 6-7s, and see if they have a follow-up question for us.
Okay, voice up.
Did you like living in the Arctic?
Do you like living in the Arctic?
Is that for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Sheila, why don't you start? They're curious about, do you like that time up north when you're in the Arctic?
Oh, yes. I mean, I've lived in the Arctic most of my life, and I've only been in Montreal since October because of internet is so bad up north. But I lived 18 years in Inuit in Nunavik, even further north, and where my birthplace is. And I love the Arctic. I mean, we protect what we love, and I love the Arctic because it has given me so much since birth to become who I am today. The foundation that I received as a child from my culture, from my people, from my language, and the hunting culture in particularly, and the wonderful food that we get from the land and that ice stays with me for always. And even though I'm living here in Montreal, I mean, last night I was lugging caribou meat into my freezer that I got from one of our communities, and the fish that we get. We constantly eating. And as I say, my little grandson just loves country food, what we call country food. And so, yes, indeed, it's what it gives, to us in terms of the strength and the culture. It's just so powerful. And you can't disconnect from that ever. And even those who have lived far away from home for a long period of time always go back home. There is a really strong cultural pull and a connection to our way of life. And absolutely, I mean, that's why I protect what I love, because I love my Arctic.
All right. And Hilda and Sunniva, I know the answer to this question already, because the two of you, I think, have been drawn to both of the polar regions for at least 25 years or more now, I think.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's kind of interesting. Up in when we were at Bumsaboo for 19 months, there's no indigenous population up there. It's 2,600 people in the settlement of Longyearbyen, and I think they represent something like 62 nationalities. So we were surrounded by just the natural world and the wildlife. And Sheila, you mentioned a couple of things that the children are taught up in the Arctic, living with the land in harmony, patience, to be courageous, bold under pressure, not to be impulsive. And those are things that we lived deeply with for our time up in the Arctic. And I have never felt stronger because I didn't have any media. There was no TV. There was no negative news coming into our beings.
Wow.
So we got to sit in a place of, quiet contemplation and deep immersion, and got to access a part of ourself, which is our own internal wisdom. And I think unless people have the opportunity to go into the wilderness and live in community with others, you realize it's hard to realize how much we really need each other as people, because we've learned how to do so many things independent of one another. But all the communities in the Arctic, like where you grew up, you had to depend on each other for your existence. And to fragment that is to lose a really deep thread of what's important to our survival as a species. So it was a very powerful experience for us, and it was just a snippet in my lifetime.
All right. Well, I've got another question here ready to go. There it is. So our class in Linwood, they're saying how in the Waterloo region where they live, the Indigenous peoples, they have celebrations like powwows with music and dance. So they're curious if up in the northern part of Quebec, if there's maybe similar celebrations with music and dance. What kind of gatherings do Indigenous people have?
Yeah, it's not just Nunavik, but it's all the Inuit world, when religion took away our incredible practices, including drum dancing and throat singing, there's a new generation, and my daughter's been part of that for the past, she was 17 when she started to bring back throat singing by learning from the elders and drum dancing. And to this day, she's 46, and to this day, she is still teaching many, and she's performing, and many others are performing as well. So we have now this incredible, we don't call them powwows, but we certainly have music festivals. And at every kind of big event, we have throat singers that open up an event, whether it's a political event or a celebration of any kind. And we have all of that. So it's just remarkable, these kinds of incredible festivals that exist today. My grandson is now kind of a modern rapper, but he goes to Greenland the other day, and takes part in all of these incredible musical festivals that are happening all throughout the Arctic. So we do have that, and we bring back the remarkable, as I say, the drum dancing and the throat singing that exists today, as well as the modern song and dance that's happening, where the younger generation take on a lot of the modern ways as well. So yes, we do have that, and we celebrate that.
All right, that's great. And it's right in line with what you were saying, Sheila, about we always think about the animals first when we think about the Arctic, and I think that's the same thing we think about with things we're losing. We think about the animals and the ecosystems, which of course is important, but we're also losing languages and culture. So it's important.
Absolutely, Joe. And I'm glad you raised that, because I've always said, it's not just the ice that we're losing, but the wisdom that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that wisdom that we're really trying to protect, to keep and maintain, because we see the future of our younger generation in a way that if we can keep that ice intact, and that lessons that are learned on that ice and that are so transferable, as I say, to the modern setting, then we have a chance at making it. And we have a chance then of us as well continuing to be the sentinels and the guardians that are protecting not just our way of life, but our whole planet as a whole. And so those are important connections to make, I think, when we're talking about climatic changes.
Yeah. So a final question as we get close to the hour mark here, just came in via the chat, and I think it's the perfect question to kind of maybe sum today up a little bit, which is, we hear so much pessimism in the news, so much doom and gloom. What gives each of you hope? So I don't know who wants to start, but what gives you hope for the future?
I guess I could start us off.
Sure.
What gives me hope is that there's increased conversation around what's happening. We have all the scientific knowledge to understand that our world is upside down, and it's changing and impacting everybody, or it will at some point. It gives me hope that this generation coming up behind us, give me great hope, because and I've seen this through all of our calls with you, Joe, is that there's deep interest and engagement and curiosity and imagination around some of the issues at stake. And so I think that we have to all keep talking about climate change, and we all have to understand how important each one of us is in the conversation, but also in terms of protecting our planet. And it doesn't, you don't need to be a rocket scientist, so to speak. You just need to get curious and step outside and embrace the natural world, and then you will do the very thing that both Sheila and I have talked about, and Hilda, protect what we love.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think indeed, you don't have to be in the Arctic to be able to protect the Arctic. You can be in nature no matter where you are. You can go canoeing, you can go hiking, you can go biking, you can do all kinds of things that connect you to nature all around you, and you will see, and you start to really have that connection, and to your food source, like connect to your food source, know where it comes from. All of those things, because for us in the Arctic, we really do protect what we love. But what inspires me is that younger generation that's really starting to stand up, not just in the Arctic. The younger generation is starting to become very proud. They're becoming musicians and authors and fashion designers and jewelry makers, and all based on this beautiful creative way, like the beading that I'm wearing today. Just to name, just to point that out. But there's a lot happening in the younger generation all around the world where they're starting to see that their future is at stake here, and they're trying to protect their future now. And they inspire me very much as well. Altogether, I think the youth movement is a great inspiration for all of us to take. They're not mired in politics yet, so they are just working with their hearts. And that's what we need to do, just like Sunniva and Hilda are doing, as Hearts in the Ice. That's what this is all about. It's working with your heart and becoming conscious leaders.
No question. I couldn't agree more. They're young and excited and don't have those kind of silly beliefs yet that there's limitations or you have to hold yourself back. They just say what's on their sleeve, right? They wear their heart on their sleeve, and I think they understand better than anybody what's at stake.
Exactly.
Hilda, we have you there. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what gives you hope?
Yes, there was what gives us hope, right? I didn't hear the question. I didn't hear the answers. But I just what inspires me is all your kids out there that engaged and participate in this call with Joe and with us, and also I think there are possibilities that everyone can actually make huge changes in their life if everyone goes together. And Sunniva and I really saw that the power of one or the power of two is really the matter of just engaging themselves or ourselves and take action and try to keep talking about it, because we do need a new narrative. It's not all that we have to stop doing. We need to talk about. We should start to talk about what we should start doing. So new phrases and new engagements around all the good things that we are going to create. So yes, I really do have hope, and just all the communication that's around the world now about climate change really gives me hope, and you kids out there.
All right. Thank you, Hilda. As we're ready to wind things down for today, I do want to make sure that we share the link to Hearts in the Ice. I believe it's a newly revamped website that you can check out and find everything that Hilda and Sunniva are up to.
And you know what, Joe? I just have to say, Sheila, people like Sheila give me hope, because you put your heart and soul for 27 years into shining a light, a big spotlight on your culture and tradition and the history of our peoples. And that is so important, because your book and your knowledge and wisdom will live on forever because of that. And it was just a real inspiration for me to read what you wrote. So you give me hope.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to all of our live classrooms today. Thank you to the YouTube crew who were sending in such great questions via the chat. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. A huge shout out to Hilda in the high Arctic. Thanks for calling in via satellite phone. Sunniva, it's great to see you as always. Thank you so much. And Sheila, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for sharing your story, the wisdom, and speaking for those in the North who don't always get a chance to share their stories and share what they want to say.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I think it's these kinds of connections that I think that are making things flow in a way that we need to, in a direction that we need to reimagine a new way forward with that intention. And I think this is also very, very helpful. So thanks for that opportunity, Suniva, and it's wonderful getting to know you. And
likewise.
We'll have to stay connected for sure.
Absolutely. And thanks again to Wings for supporting our outreach this month.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we are going to sign off for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you say that again, Sheila?
Nakormik is thank you.
Nakomik?
Nakormik.
Nakomik.
Yeah, Nakormik. Yes.
Well,